tap, 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 tap. Okay, going back into session, we're going to the Government Relations Committee, and since this is a rulemaking hearing, I will handle this committee. I'd like to ask Chris Richardson to come up. I do have to read an introductory statement on all rulemaking hearings. So, this is a rulemaking hearing originally scheduled for January 22nd, 2016, and rescheduled due to snow and ice before the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to consider amending Rule 1660-01-08, which deals with rules and regulations governing hunts. My name is Jim Bledsoe, and I will conduct the hearing. The order of proceedings are: the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency staff will present the information on the proposed rule. The commission members will be permitted to comment and ask questions. Members of the audience will be permitted to comment and ask questions. Staff members and members of the audience wishing to speak should identify themselves before speaking, and I reserve the right to limit comments and discussion, especially in cases of repetition. Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The rule before the commission today was one that agency staff drafted in response to the commission responding to some resort owners around Reelfoot Lake. And we were asked to consider what changes, if any, we might make to the permitting requirements on Reelfoot Wildlife Management Area. And as part of that discussion, we filed the rule in an effort to have a avenue for change ready if that was the direction we wanted to go. We also conducted a public meeting on the subject down at Reelfoot, and the overwhelming response that we got is that the people at Reelfoot did not want to make any changes, that they were happy with the existing system. So with that, Mr. Chairman, it's the agency's recommendation that the commission withdraw this rule.
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman Ripley.
I move to withdraw the rule.
Motion has been made to withdraw the Rule 1660-01-08. Do I hear a second? Second. Motion's been made and second. Any discussion from the commission?
Would you explain the amendments? I mean, we've got more changes that addresses than just Reelfoot.
Well, the rule contains a lot more than just Reelfoot, but any amendments that are in your rule packet or the language that's in your rule packet will not, if this rule amendment is withdrawn,
Right.
the existing rule will not change.
I just wonder why all this, I understand what we're doing, but why were all these included in that
I don't know.
changes and?
I'm not sure what you're looking at,
I'm
Commissioner
looking at the
Cox.
rule.
Well, I assume you're looking at the red line version of it,
Right.
which is the document that we have to submit that shows the existing text of the rule and any changes. So it could have been formatting issue is why some of that had to be moved around. But the only amendment that we filed would have changed the requirements associated with the Reelfoot Preservation Permit versus a wildlife management area permit. So there may have been some things that had to be changed to accomplish that, but in any event, it's the recommendation of the agency that we not go forward and that we leave the rule as it existed prior to the filing of this amendment.
Any other questions from the commission? Any questions from the audience? Hearing none, this being a rulemaking hearing, Ms. Danette, will you call the roll? Now, this is a vote of aye will withdraw the rule. So a vote of nay will put it in place. So.
Chad Baker.
Aye.
Jim Bledsoe.
Aye.
Harold Cannon. Jeff Cook. Bill Cox.
Aye.
Kurt Holbert. Connie King. Jeff McMillan. Jim Ripley.
Aye.
Bill Swan. Trey Teague. David Watson. Jamie Woodson.
Thank you, Ms. Danetta. The ayes have it, and Rule 1660-01-08, Rules and Regulations Govern Hunt, that amendment has been withdrawn. That concludes the Government Relations Committee and the rulemaking hearing, so we'll move into the Budget Committee. Chairman Harold Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair recognizes Tim Churchill regarding 3 budget expansions. This will be a committee vote at first, and with the committee's permission, we're going to hear all three budget expansions. And then it will be my recommendation that we voted all three at one time. Tim?
Thank you, Commissioner Cannon. Get through this stuff. The first of these three requests are for funding. Well, the first two actually are funding for this area around Bear Hollow Mountain Wildlife Management Area. The green is what we already own. Some of the others are just protected lands held by other agencies. Some are lands that we may get portions of, like the yellow over to the right. We're eventually going to have a portion of that available for, well, actually most of it will be available for hunting, but TWA will get a portion of that. The RLF Winchester Properties, which is the big request. This is all on unobligated PR funds, which, as you know, we've collected quite a bit of over the last couple of years. No federal money goes into any of these, or excuse me, no, it's all federal money that goes into them. There's no state dollars going into it. The purple ones are sort of purple on the west part off of Bear Hollow Mountain WMA represent, it's 4,642 acres. And this company is wanting to sell those properties that are in 2 tracts. It's high conservation land. There's caves on it. All of it would be huntable, and the offer comes out to like $750 an acre, which is 1980s prices, frankly, and it's a pretty good deal for us. The Conservation Fund and the Nature Conservancy would be the partner in that and pay the non-federal portion with grant monies. And then the second one is the Keeble Tract, which is on the north part of Bear Hollow Mountain. I wish I had a pointer, but the north part of Bear Hollow Mountain, there's a red tract, and it sits. Above it is a state natural area, but this would be in addition. It's adjacent to Bear Hollow Mountain, and I believe it's 450 acres thereabouts. So that's a different project, but same area. Again, the land trust would be covering the non-federal portion of that one, and the ask for that is $550,000. Any questions on those? Just because I'm leaving the area after this.
Quick recap on the first one, because it's not in our notes on the agenda. The amount of acreage proposed to be purchased under number 1 is how much again?
4,642.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from the committee before we go to the Catoosa? Tim?
What's the deal? Do I not have Catoosa here? Okay, so let me just tell you about it. The Catoosa's huge, as you know. It's up in Region 3. This is a small tract of about 14 acres, I believe, that sits pretty deep inside Catoosa, so it's surrounded on all sides by Catoosa. And we always try to take those in-holdings out and buy them where we can. There's a easement that goes with that tract that goes through Catoosa TWA lands, and if we buy that tract, we'll eliminate that as well. And it's right on the Obi River. It appraised a little higher than I thought it would, just because it's right there on the river. But it's I guess it's 7 acres, and it's $75,000 in all federal money is the request for that one. Sorry I didn't get that slide in there. I swear I put it in there. It's gone though.
Tim, if that's the worst that happens today, you've had a good day, sir.
Agreed.
Tim, walk us through, there is a pretty significant number here on per acre basis. Would you walk us through the process of, is there appraisal, and then I believe, doesn't that appraisal have to be approved by another state entity? Is that correct?
Well, actually, Yes, but the process is I go down to the State Building Commission, Executive Subcommittee, and they okay us going after this, and then the appraisal comes after that. If they approve it, we go into the process of acquisition, which is appraisal review. After that, we do an option with the seller, and then it's followed by a survey of the land to make sure the acres are right, and then the phase one environmental, and then we get to closing after that.
So just as clarification, this is not just TWRA proposing to spend $75,000. There is concurrence by other entities within the state of this appraisal. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Tim, what's there that drives that price like that? That's a big price for Catoosa.
For Catoosa,
I think that summed it up.
some of it has to do with the fact that it's inside Catoosa, and you know what the neighborhood's gonna look like forever. That's one appraisal, every appraisal costs a fairly significant amount, so I didn't go get a second appraisal on it. The guy wants to sell at that price, and we wanna take that in holding out, and it's, in the grand scheme of things, not too bad.
And it is on the river, did I hear you say?
It's on the
River frontage.
Obed River, Obed. Yeah.
Any other questions from the committee? Commissioners, you'll have a second shot at this, but if you'd like to ask a question, the floor is open. Any questions from the public? We have 3 real estate budget expansions before us. 2 are related to Bear Hollow. One is for 4,642 acres. The second is for 455 acres. The third budget expansion is the Miller property at Catoosa at 7 acres. The costs of those have been presented to you. Is there a motion to approve these either individually or as a whole? So moved. I have a motion. I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Tim, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
I have one question, Tim. You guys do coming on the commission here now, I see how many acres each year that we buy back through the different grants and through the different monies. I think to our constituents, it would be very helpful in a yearly publication or once a year, put our total number of acreage that we have picked back up for our sportsmen in the state of Tennessee. I think that'd be helpful to us to be able to say we bought this many acres and get a recap of it. We do it at each meeting. We buy some land somewhere, but if you could get that together for us, I think that'd be helpful information for us. As when we have other constituents ask us, we have something to say, hey, this is one thing we do on the commission.
Great idea.
Good. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is going to be a little bit unusual, but I am going to need committee action on this. Item number 4 is a budget expansion for $26,000 for the Bill Cox bat syndrome. I'm sorry, the white nose bat syndrome, and it's your love. I mean, it's your passion, buddy. I'm sorry. However, we have voted and approved this expansion earlier, and so therefore I need a motion to take this off the agenda. Have a motion. Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you all so much. Chair recognizes Bart Carter regarding a budget expansion related to the Boone Habitat Project.
Thank you, Commissioner Cannon, Commissioners. I've got a short presentation here just to kind of give y'all a little bit of background about the project that's being proposed. Some of y'all already are aware of Boone Reservoir being drawn down by TVA last year to address some dam safety issues there. They had some leaking issues on the earthen part of the dam. So they officially announced last year that they would be drawing that reservoir down for a period of 5 to 7 years to address that issue and do the necessary repairs. So in that time period, we were approached by TVA to try to develop a partnership that would look at revegetation projects along the shoreline of the reservoir while it was drawn down, and potentially help with erosion control during that drawdown period, and as a future benefit, provide fish habitat when the reservoir returned back to normal operation. So with that, we started discussions, and I do want to recognize a couple of individuals. One of them's here today, John Hammonds, and Russell Young, who is not here, but both of these guys have worked really hard on this project, and they're kind of the wind in the sail for getting this thing moving down the lake, so to speak. So, but anyway, we started working on this, and as we went into the process, we had several things that we realized. As they draw the lake down, fish populations are going to respond accordingly. There's not as much habitat available. We went from about a 4,400 acre surface acre reservoir down to about 2,200 acres at the drawdown level that they're at now. So about half the amount of habitat is available, so those fish populations will adjust accordingly. Likewise, our agency has adjusted our stocking of that reservoir to okay, sorry, I didn't. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't hit the slideshow button, but anyway, fish populations will reach a balance based on the amount of habitat, and then when the reservoir returns to full pool, the fish population numbers will be relatively low. And an example of that's happened here recently is Lake Cumberland in Kentucky, where they had a similar situation and had drawdown for an extended period of time. And they observed the fish populations going down in relation to the available habitat. So we know that no feasible amount of stocking that we can do through the hatchery system that we have can replace that natural reproduction. So we want to try to enhance that spawning habitat or that juvenile fish habitat when the reservoir does come back to full pool. So in going through this process, TVA has initially or has agreed to award us a grant for 3 years, and we're in the process of working through that right now. It's my understanding that TVA is working on the contract that they will present to us to fund the project, but their intention is to award us 3 years worth of money to go through the process of doing this shoreline vegetation management. And in doing this project, we'll be seeding the exposed banks. We're going to be buying some equipment to do this with, in particular hydro seeding equipment, tractor to do some of the ground prep, and then a bulk of the supply costs will be grasses and trees and shrubs to do the actual plantings. Now this is just an image showing areas where we would be doing the work. As you can see, we get a lot of erosion issues there as the exposed soils on slopes that are exposed to rain that don't have any vegetation. So these are areas that we would really want to try to affect and do the seeding project intensely. Areas where we have natural vegetation coming back on its own, as portrayed in this illustration or photograph here, is where we probably wouldn't do as much vegetation management. So what are some of the species that we're planning on putting out there? Indian grass, little blue stem. These are native warm season grasses that we're planning on planting and establishing in these bare areas. And then some flowering species like purple coneflower, black-eyed Susan, and sunflower. So these may have some benefit for wildlife and pollinators as well. So there's a variety of plants that we're looking at planting and putting out there on the landscape if this project goes forward. So a little bit about the project funding. This is all TVA funds that they will give to us in a grant. And we've got 3 years worth of funding there that their intentions are to give us in one lump sum. So the total budget is $350,000 that we're asking to be able to accept from TVA. And then we're asking for an expansion in the FY16 and FY17 budget for $162,000 for FY16 and $94,000 in 17. So that's kind of a summary of where we're at. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Bart, thank you so much. We have a proposed budget expansion of $162,000 for FY 2016, $94,000 for FY 2017 related to the Boone Habitat project. If this is favorably approved at the committee level, Commissioner Baker will be recusing himself. He is actually working on the project. Before we had a motion, I didn't know if Commissioner Baker wanted to make any comments or.
Do we have anything in there for coontail or Eurasian milfoil or hydrilla while we're up there with with the water down? We could add a little habitat right now is the only thing I would suggest.
Well, we were pretty specific in the conversations with TVA as to what species they wanted. So.
Mr. Carter, that sounded more like a change order to me, coming from a true contractor. So, Commissioner McMillan.
Bart, I was looking at what you're saying you're planning. So the stuff that we're using the money for to plant is not really going to be for extended habitat? Is it just for erosion control and all?
Well, the grasses and the flowering species will be temporary. We're hoping that once those grasses get established, they'll be there for a year or two as the water comes up, and they'll slowly decay. But we're also looking at river cane, buttonbush, and some other tree species that we'll plant as well as far as woody vegetation. Now we'll do that in areas where we're allowed to. We've got a relatively small amount of TVA land there, and most of the area is privately owned. So we are working with landowners to secure some areas where we can do that. And I think we've got over 50 now that have signed up to allow us to come onto their property to do that.
So you have 50 private landowners that are going to let you plant trees and
Right
such?
now, I think, is that right, John? Right around 50? Okay.
He did say cypress trees and bush.
I mean, we have property, we have a dock. In fact, my brother's boat's hanging there. I'm sure he'd like to donate it to get them, have money for habitat. But I'm just saying, it's, unless you live there and experience what's going on with, it's a residential lake. And it's a big deal what's happened to that lake and the loss of property value and all that. And anything that we can do to maybe lessen the hurt of what happened by improving the lake so that it does come back, people are excited about it, and I think we need to certainly be doing that. I know that, I think trees are going to be the things that will give us the permanent habitat, but I guess we're going to have to be so careful where we plant them because it's such a lake that's used for jet skiing and all that. We can't necessarily set up hazards either.
Yeah, navigation is certainly a concern, and TVA is going to have to do some of that management on their own in limited areas just for dam safety, and then as the reservoir comes back up, they'll have to manage the navigation there too. So.
But there's but I'd like to get with you on the private land stuff and talk to you somewhat. If you give me a call, I would like to talk about that individually. So,
thank you.
Commissioner Cox.
I didn't have a question till you started talking, Commissioner McMillan, and maybe I'm confused, and I'm not a fisheries guy to know what good habitat and food for fish is, but what you ask, are we spending this money? It's not helping the fish. But the things that you named would be better habitat? I mean, why are we spending the money for erosion control and we need to be spending it for fish habitat? Or is that? That's what I would want.
Yeah,
I mean,
You know, we have a lot of exposed soil out there now that's running into the lake, and in the river and comes down and goes, proceeds on down the system. So, initially, it'll help with the erosion control, and then the establishment of that vegetation, it'll be there on the landscape until the reservoir comes back up. And so the benefit to the fisheries is when that vegetation becomes flooded, then that provides a nursery area for those fish to spawn in, or the little fish to have more cover and have potentially a higher survival rate.
My question, I guess, is for Commissioner Baker, the milfoil and hydrilla and all that. Will it grow on dry ground?
Oh, no, but it will in the water. We go ahead and plant, we go ahead and plant some right now and just kind of help everything. And it'll die out.
Right
See,
on the very edge, I guess.
When we flood it that deep, it would die out later. But to answer Commissioner Cox's question, Bill, a good way to explain the habitat situation is right now when you fill it up, you're going to have the Sahara Desert for habitat. When you plant all this stuff, you're going to have, it's going to be like New York City. There's going to be 1 million places for those baby fry and those fish to get, and it's going to be a great habitat for those juvenile fish to survive from a natural spawn standpoint.
But the things you asked for sounded like that you would rather have seen them plant something else rather
Oh, that
than
was, I knew they weren't going to do that. I was just trying to bring on some extra TVA would probably not be too happy with me if I said we wanted to put that in there right now.
Okay. TVA money.
One other thing, and Bart, I don't know if you can answer this, or Frank might. Are we going to build any structure, or can we have, I mean, as far as fish habitat structures, I mean, it would be an opportune time while the water is down. I mean, if we could work that out with TVA,
Yeah.
is that something in
And
our,
that's what we are working on. I think John's working on getting a permit. I think y'all may have been introduced to the Reef Ball project that
Yeah.
we've been working on, so.
Chad,
as
you
soon-
can't walk around with your GPS.
As soon as we get that permit to put those structures out in the reservoir, then we will take advantage of this drawdown and put those out there, so.
Are there any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Is there a motion to approve a budget expansion? Second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, I want to present this to you in 3 packages. No, because we acted on that at the last meeting. Pass that in a minute. Is that okay?
That's good.
Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Budget Committee, I recommend approval of 3 budget expansion items, items 1, 2, and 3 on our agenda. 2 for Bear Hollow Mountain, 1 for $3.5 million, a second for $550,000, and a budget expansion for the purchase of property at Catoosa Wildlife Management Area for $75,000.
Motion's been made on those 3 budget expansions. Do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion from the commission? Any from the audience? All in favor of the 3 budget expansions, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. The budget expansion, 2 for Bear Hollow and 1 for Catoosa, pass.
Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Budget Committee, I recommend approval of a budget expansion related to the Boone Habitat Project. This will cover 2 fiscal years. $162,000 will be added to the fiscal year 2016 budget. $94,000 will be added to the fiscal year 2017 budget. All of these funds will be via the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Motion's been moved. Boone Lake. Seconded. Any discussion from the commission? Any from the audience? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. The Boone Lake budget expansion passes. Do, Ms. Dannette, note that that Commissioner Baker abstained from that vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the January meeting of the Budget Committee approves a proposed budget expansion for $35,000 for fiscal year 2016 for dive services. On behalf of the committee, I recommend approval of that expansion.
Motion's been made by the committee and seconded. All in favor, any discussion from the commission? This was, like I said, brought up at the Memphis meeting, so just to refresh your memory, it's for dive services. Any discussion from the audience? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The budget expansion, $35,000 for dive services passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Budget Committee recognizes Tim Churchill regarding the real estate report update.
A lot of this stuff is in your books. I'm sure the slides are. I can go through these pretty quick, but we've had, beginning in Region 1, we've had several tracks that have closed, and pretend this is January, because I was supposed to give this in January, that have closed in the last couple months over the holidays, thereabouts. Those include the Reelfoot Lumber Tract, which is up in the Obion system, and also in that same system, the Northwest Harbor Tract. I think the core mitigation tract, we finally got that one closed, and that's on the Forked Deer system. And there's a little bit at Parker Branch Wildlife Management Area that we also closed on. We got several kind of scattered all around. Most of these are wetland fund acquisitions. Some are, as noted here, are gifts, but we're pretty active in Region 1 as always. Here in Region 2, we've got a few, and one of the larger ones closed, the Pump Log Hollow Tract, which is, lo and behold, at Bear Hollow Mountain. That one closed around the same time, right before the end of the year. And we've got several smaller tracks in different areas. Feel free to ask any questions as I'm kind of going through this, but I've kind of missed a point with Bear Hollow Mountain. There's a lot of opportunity down there because there's a lot of lands that are for sale, but the other thing is that this is where we can come up with federal match. The nonprofits are able to go get grants from an entity called the Open Space Institute, and so they're able to match whatever we can provide. So there's a lot of opportunity down there and a lot of opportunity to connect conservation lands, and that's what we've been trying to do. That's been the idea behind that. Also adds a lot of hunting land that's accessible from Nashville. It's always a challenge to buy real estate in Middle Tennessee. It's pretty expensive, and we have to move a little further away from the city to get anything we can afford. But it's always good to be able to add to hunting lands in Region 2. Region 3 got several that are still winding their way through. Cunningham down here at Scotts Gulf has been going for a long time, but it looks like that one's finally coming to close. That's 2,400 plus acres. McCart Tract up at Catoosa, same thing. We're getting close on all four of these, really. And then lastly, in Region 4, we did close that the Cambrin Tract, which was the boat access that we talked about back in the summer on the South Holston River. And we've got a couple of smaller tracts. There's one up here in Orchard Bog in northeast Tennessee. I guess that's Johnson County, and some over back towards the North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area. Some of those are fairly large. That one furthest to the west, Gunsight Mountain, 2,200 acres, and that is being bought with wetland funds. If you may remember, we're allowed to use wetland funds in a couple of areas, one being Scotts Gulf in Region 3 and the other being North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area. So some of these that are up around North Cumberland, you'll see where we're kind of active, or that's because we're using wetland funds up there. But anyhow, we're getting close on a lot of them. A lot of them have been in the acquisition process for a while, and we're getting them wrapped up in the next couple of months. So I'll have a lot more to report the next time I do this.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions from the commission? From the audience? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Committee recognizes Ken Tarkenton for an update on our financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There should be a one-page front and back report in your financial report in your book. I'll be reporting through the month of December. In the top of the page, the first page, the boating fund, we're approximately 3.3% ahead of where we were at the same point in time last year. And through the first 6 months of the year, we've spent approximately 40% of the boating allotment. Middle of the page, the wildlife fund, we're what you might call flat, 0.3% of our projection for the year. And the expenditures through the first 6 months are approximately 35%. At the bottom of the page, the two endowment funds, the watchable endowment has approximately $6,050,000 in it. The lifetime sportsman has $43,588,000. On the second page, or the back page, I believe, of your report at the top, the wetlands acquisition fund has a balance of $16,987,000. We've zeroed the maintenance account out as we usually do. And the compensation or in lieu of tax has $446,000 balance as of December. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Ken. Any
Yes, sir.
questions from the commission? From the audience? Ken, I believe we talked about in March maybe giving us an update, an overall update on our investments,
Sure.
the endowment investments. Can we do that at the March or April meeting? Which would be best? What's best for you?
Either one.
Director Carter, do you have a preference on which meeting? Why don't we just shoot for the March meeting if that's all right?
Sure.
It looks like we're doing better than 0.07%, and that's exciting for a change. Ken, thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, that concludes Budget Committee's report.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon. I guess moving into the last few minutes of my chairmanship, I'd like to call on Chairman Jim Ripley for a report from the Nominations Committee for our new slate of officers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The nominating committee and I are pleased to nominate the following slate of officers: Harold Cannon, Chairman; Jamie Woodson, Vice Chairperson; David Watson, Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman Ripley. I will take that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of the new slate of officers, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, everyone. I guess we'll, Ed, do you want to say some closing remarks? I need tissue paper and all that stuff. No.
I would, Mr. Chairman, but if you don't mind, I'll reserve those till just a little bit later.
Good job. I want to thank everybody for the year that we've had. We've done a lot. We went through some pretty significant changes. License increase took effect. Buck limits changed. All kinds of stuff. And I've always heard if you're not the sharpest knife in the drawer, that you surround yourself with people that are. And I couldn't have been surrounded by a better group, because I really appreciate y'all. So thank you very much. Y'all are way too kind, way too kind. Mr. Chairman,
Well, you're still gonna be chairman of me.
Hang on a second. I think we forgot the better half over here.
Oh, we hadn't forgotten.
Okay, all
We
right.
haven't forgotten. I want to thank you for opening the door for short people to be chair of this commission. If you look at the history here, you have Cox, you have McMillan, enough said. All kidding aside, Director Carter, I believe we have something to show our deep, deep appreciation to Chairman Bledsoe.
We do, Chairman. Chairman Bledsoe, there's not much written on this plaque, because to put on the plaque the gratitude that we have for you and what you've done this year would have to be a much bigger plaque. So I would just like to read simply what's on it and then make just a couple of comments. It simply says, "In grateful appreciation for the services rendered as chairman of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission from March 1st of 2015 to February the 29th of 2016. Would like the record to show that you got one more day than most people." This being, I would like to say, I'm sure there'll be comments from everyone else, but on behalf of the agency staff, I'd just like to say we really appreciate your leadership, how you've conducted things, and you're exactly right. We did go through some very major changes, but everywhere that I went, that I had the opportunity to see you speak before groups, the professionalism that you exhibited and the way that you conducted yourself, and no matter how adverse the conditions were, you're always very friendly and very professional in how you went forward and working with every group of people. I think especially noted that our relationship with the Farm Bureau is at the height that I have ever seen it, and I think we owe a lot of that directly to you. That's an organization that's so important to us in so many different reasons, but not only those, but every other organization we work with and individuals across the state. And I know that you haven't confined yourself to the Plateau area, that you've been from one end of the state to the other and spreading the work that we do and representing the commission. I could go on and on, but I'll just simply say to you and Sonia and the kids that we often saw that you made them come to the meetings. But we appreciate having them as well. But thank you so much on behalf of us, and we look forward to you still being on the commission, obviously, but we're very appreciative of all you did. With that, we also have this plaque at whatever time, Mr. Chairman, the former chairman, that you'd like to present that, we can do it now or later.
Let's do it now, but let's make sure Sonia's up there. As my first act, I'm going to claim a little executive privilege. I've got a feeling there'll be some more comments. We have been blessed to have not only the slate of commissioners that we have on this commission, but the chairs that we have had. Bill Cox, who's on the commission, former chair. Jeff McMillan, Chink Brown, Jeff Griggs, and Jim Bledsoe. And there's always like in high school, there's always a class that doesn't do so good. I hope I'm not that class, but there's that possibility. But we have been most fortunate, and Ed's right. Your leadership has been remarkable and steadying, quite frankly, during some rough times. I went back through, and if you go on the website and look at Jim's resume, farmer in Fentress County, very active in his community, president of Fentress County Farm Bureau. The list goes on and on. From Harold Cannon's perspective, we've probably been most fortunate to have a chair who's probably the best businessman in this state. And He truly has given us respect from other business owners, and that does include the Farm Bureau. Your leadership in all those arenas continues to stoke the fire of credibility that this agency and this commission has. But probably the best compliment that I have to offer is it goes back to Angie's and my first gathering with Region 4. And John had us there at a picnic, and when Angie and I got back in the truck that evening, I hadn't been on the commission very long, we said, this is about family. This is really a family. And you all have heard me say that maybe ad nauseum around here, but that's how deeply rooted it is with me. Angie and I both see what a remarkable family is here. And what has been fun about this year is that it hadn't just been Chairman Bledsoe. It's been the Bledsoe family. They have been here a lot. And if any chairman reflected the familyship that this agency is about, the Bledsoe family has done so. And if anybody has set the bar pretty darn high of how to be a husband, how to be a dad, you have done so. And Sonia, you are a great, great gift to us. And thank you for sharing him with us. Thank you for letting me wake you all up at terrible hours in the morning in Memphis. Thank you. And my last word is, I need your help. I am going to need a lot of help from you. So with that, let me open up the floor.
Yeah, that's kind of hard. I would, I would second what Harold said, of course. And I was sitting there thinking before you said it about how a man's reputation and his character is reflected in the way he treats his family and his wife and his children. And I believe you're the hardest working commissioner here if you do what you say you do on the farm. And the position you have sat, and Harold will, is not an easy spot to try to keep everybody herded up and gathered around and moving forward. And you have done it with grace and common sense. And you can say all shucks and kick the dirt and act dumb, but you're not dumb at all. You're pretty doggone smart, and you've done a great job, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd like to say that I don't think the general public realizes what chairing this commission involves in terms of time. And Jim, I know you have other jobs, raising hundreds of thousands of chickens and so forth. But I want to thank you for giving that time and really dedicating a large portion of your life to this. You've made a great difference, and we really appreciate that.
I just want to say thank you so much, Jim, for your leadership on commission. I reminded when Jim mentions the hundreds of thousands of chickens that you have annually. Our first meeting, when I knew that you were the Farm Bureau leader who was just going to be a real asset on commission, and I needed to know you, and I walked up to you, and I was very proud because I considered myself quite the chicken farmer with my 8 chickens that have names. And I walked up to you and I said, "Hi, Jim, I'm Jamie, and I understand you're a chicken farmer." And I wisely didn't speak for just a second and thought, how many chickens do you have exactly? Thinking of my 8 chickens, Bess and Fluffy and Buffy. and he said, "Well, I don't know, probably 280 or 90,000, and I did not share with him at that moment that I considered myself a chicken farmer, and I no longer consider myself a chicken farmer. And he was very kind to this city girl, and I really appreciated not only the humor from our first visit together, but your patience, your thoughtfulness in how you've handled commission. I feel like you've given everybody on this commission a leadership opportunity You've given us a voice. You've created opportunities for us to work well together, and most importantly, keep in mind our mission for the agency and the work that we do with the public. But I just admire you and your family. I'm a huge fan of your wife, as you know, and just think the world of both of you. And I'm not processing just yet that eventually you will be off the commission, and so I'm just not going to deal with that just yet. But I'm thrilled not only with the opportunity to serve with you, I'm also very excited about the leadership role of our new chairman. Harold is a gentleman, and the kind of grace and thoughtfulness and leadership will pass well in this new leadership role, but very much appreciate you.
Jim, I want to thank you for your leadership. I've enjoyed working with you this year. Next time you're in the chicken house, watch your step.
Mr. Bledsoe, you and I have been buddies for about 5 years. We started off, when we first met, I think we shared a room for our Canada trip and got to know each other pretty well. And we've been inside and outside the state hunting together, and our families have been together. And so I consider you a great friend. And I knew when you were put in the rotation for the chairmanship that we would be well represented, and you didn't let us down. And I appreciate your friendship and look forward to always being friends, and I appreciate what you've done. And like I say, each chairman, when you serve, have got a different quality or something to bring to the agency and to the commission, and your relationship with Farm Bureau was obviously very important, and we appreciate that, and just appreciate your work ethic and what you do for us and what you do for the state of Tennessee. And man, we love you, man.
Jim, just want to tell you that I really have enjoyed this year, you chairing. And I tell you, we've been through a lot at times hostile situations and things like that, and you've been so cool. You really impressed me with your business skills and everything, and it's been a pleasure serving with you. Thank you so much.
Jim, I'd just like to say thank you. It's been an honor to serve with you, under you, as a chairman. No matter where you go across this state, from Memphis to Bristol, whether it's Farm Bureau, Soil Conservation, everybody knows Jim Bledsoe. He truly has the Tennessee spirit of being a volunteer. He volunteers so much of his time to the things of this state and to bettering this state. But just truly been an honor. I appreciate all you've done.
Echo the same thing that Kurt said. I think we had dinner at one of the meetings, and you went through the long list of committees you've been on. Like, how do you do that? But we all greatly appreciate that, and especially being my first year on the commission, I appreciate you tolerating all my stupid questions, and I'm glad you're on for another year. We'll have another year to go.
Jim, thank you for the great leadership you've given here and that time commitment. It's hard for me with the businesses I run just to be able to run down here and take a day off, and for you to take all the questions throughout the year and be able to talk to all the people. One thing you've helped me a lot, being the chairman this year, is conversations that me and Jim have had on the telephone about how to handle business, because I'm kind of rough around the edges sometimes, and Jim has been a great mentor to me, and I just want to thank you personally for helping me be a lot better businessman and person myself. Thank you.
Commissioner Bledsoe, looking at Sonia with tears in her eyes, and I can see how proud she is of you, and I think we all feel exactly the same way. I've enjoyed having you as chair, and obviously I think you were the right person at the right time, so thank you for your service.
I thank you all. I don't deserve that much compliments, but I really appreciate them, and I just have to say that couldn't do it without Sonia. I mean, like you said, I am gone a lot, and in my line of work, if I'm not there working, I don't make money. So, and she's taking care of everything. She takes care of the kids when I'm gone, and she always has my suits ready and put together and all that stuff. I can honestly say I've 5 years I've been on the commission, I think I've packed myself one time, so, she takes care of me, yeah. Yeah, it wasn't pretty, so.
She thinks she might could talk to
scolds me if
Melanie.
I wear a black suit and brown shoes, and I don't understand, but anyway, I really appreciated it. It has truly been an honor, and y'all, talking about the Farm Bureau and stuff, it's no secret that they're probably the reason that I'm on the commission. And though I've never had an agenda since I've been on the commission, but I have had one goal, and that's to get the agricultural community and the wildlife community at the same table. I mean, just communicating with one another. I mean, we're not always going to agree with everything, but if we're at the same table, we can work out our differences, and we can be probably one of the more powerful voices in the state, and be better for all of us. So that's been my goal. It's not an agenda, but and I hope I've at least ushered it in a little. So, but I think I was the first agricultural appointment on here, so I hope I've not disappointed anybody, and got one more year to fulfill that goal. So thank you very much.
I think you have accomplished that goal in spades. And I don't think anybody on this commission would argue with that. We really thank you for the service you've given and for the service you're about to give. And you and I will talk after this meeting. On behalf of Jamie and David and myself, thank you for the opportunity you're giving us. I am fully convinced that the nominating committee wanted to get me off of a committee so I wouldn't screw up any more commission meetings. We thank you for this. We thank you for this privilege. And I can't do what I get to do without a group of employees back in Knoxville and here who are taking care of business, and the support of my wife. She is my wife, my boss, my best friend. And so, Angie, thank you for letting me do this. I actually think she likes me being here because I get out of her way and I don't screw up things at the house. But thank you. Thank you so much. Couple of housekeeping things very quickly. The next meeting will be scheduled for Thursday, March the 24th, beginning at 9 a.m. The day before is the Sportsman's Caucus. I've asked Chris to speak very briefly about that, and I'm asking that all the commission plan on attending the Sportsman's Caucus. The reason we're doing a Thursday meeting and not a Thursday, Friday is that Friday is Good Friday. Chris?
Wednesday, March the 23rd, the Sportsman's Caucus will be having a reception. That reception is going to be hosted by the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Foundation. It's an event that we've put on for a couple years now. Ron Lawler has always graciously agreed to host it. He's done that again this year. We've had extremely good turnouts as far as members of the General Assembly. They've become accustomed to that reception, and it is generally very well attended. So certainly want all the commissioners that are able to be there. It's an excellent opportunity to converse with those folks in an informal setting. But it'll be March 23rd, 5 p.m. is the start. It'll go till it's over, and it'll be at the War Memorial Auditorium. So look forward to seeing everybody there.
Chris, thank you. If I could get the commission to stay around for a few very brief minutes after this, I'm getting, yeah, I'll get that. Want to go over a tentative calendar for the rest of the year, as well as we have gotten some information on the waterfowl October site visit that I want to share with you all. And then I think there's follow-up on Commissioner Teague's question regarding the law enforcement matters. Director Carter, do you have any closing comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. Wanted to report a little bit about the Asian carp thing that we've been working with lately. Chairman Bledsoe and Commissioner Cannon, Commissioner Watson, and staff members met with 2 or 3 different groups of folks and trying to figure out a way to make the removal of Asian carp profitable in the state of Tennessee, or at least some way to slow that down. I just want, without going into details, let you know that I think we're making some progress. We've actually had the day after our most recent meeting, we had a Chinese delegation here from BGI Industries who shows great interest in helping do that, along with a couple of other Asian groups that are also meeting. So I just wanted you to know that that's moving forward, and I think that we'll do okay there, and eventually. But we have another meeting upcoming with 2 commissioners, actually 3 commissioners of other state agencies within the next 2 weeks to talk about their involvement as well from their perspective in their own departments. And so mentioned that, and I mentioned the Blue Ribbon Panel. I would mention the last meeting we had, Chairman Bledsoe was not able to be there. He did have a poultry operation coming in. We put in quotes that he chickened out, and but he spurred us on to victory. But and the first time I met him was at the time he was so quiet. We went on that duck hunt together, and I know I'm on a roll here in terms of saying weird things, but he came out of his shell. When he started rapping and singing music and turning his hat sideways, I knew we were in for a good ride, so that was good. The Blue Ribbon Panel that we mentioned the last time or two we were together, that legislation is finally going to move forward, and on March the 2nd, there will be a reception and a congressional delegation in Washington, D.C. to outline what that legislation would look like and who would probably sponsor it. I think there will be some Tennessee people involved in that as well. Again, if that were to go forward, as Bill outlined it for you last time, if it all passed just like it were now, we'd be looking at about $22 million for the state of Tennessee, which to do work for the agency, which would be a huge thing for us. But anyway, just wanted to let you know about that. I guess my last closing comment, Chairman talked about having smarter people around you. When we talked about this mercury issue, I was bringing up to Dave McKinney the enforcement problems because I knew how thermometers work, and I thought if you catch an undersized fish and it gets hot, it will then become legal. And he just kind of looked at me for a while and went on. So I just wanted you to know that it does pay, Mr. Chairman, to have smarter people around you. And I can see by the looks that's probably enough for me, so thank you. Congratulations to the new officers, and we'll see you next month.
We need to take a hard look at a new executive director, okay?
Jim Bledsoe, if it makes you feel any better, Ed cutting into you, I heard a story about him releasing a bear in West Tennessee earlier, and it was actually before I was born. So I'd like to hear more about that since I was...
I'm going to say thank you, Director Carter, but I'm not sure why I'm saying thank you. But anyway, any other matters? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? I like the yep. All in favor say aye. We will see you in March. Thank you.